the 2021 to 2025 Town of Mahone Bay Strategic Plan. Just to let everybody know that this session is being recorded and will be on the Town of Mahone Bay YouTube channel. Is that correct? Is that the right channel that it's going to be on? Great. Yeah, so it'll be there for those to view that aren't able to attend today. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jamie O'Neill. I'm partner with Uprise Consulting. And over, throughout the fall and winter, we were working with the group submitted the proposal, and we were the recipient and awarded the contract to complete the strategic planning process and the plan for the Town of Mahone Bay. And that really all started in the month of January. So now it's May, so we can fast forward a few months into that. And what we'd like to do today is present to you all a very high level overview of the strategic plan and answer any questions or comments that you may have. So before I get started, does anybody have a question or a comment? Not hearing any. What I'll do then is I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to show everybody the draft of the strategic plan here. So, okay. So everybody should now see what I'm seeing, just the Town of Mahone Bay Strategic Plan 2021 to 25. So just to give everybody a bit of background in how this was completed, in working with the team and the councillors for the Town of Mahone Bay, we first began this process by looking at and gathering all types of public engagement, focus groups and questionnaires and surveys that had been sent out to the residents of Town of Mahone Bay for, over the last 3 to 5 years. And we took all that information and compiled it as part of our education and as part of the process in terms of identifying direction, vision and mission for the organization, and where do we see our town going. So a lot of information that had been gathered over the past few years. So perhaps you're on the call today and you remember completing a survey or going to a session to give your feedback. All of that information was recorded and was part of the planning to answer, the big questions in terms of where do we see ourselves going in the next few years. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody did know that all previous feedback was and is always regarded in terms of direction and where we want to go. So for the Town of Mahone Bay, in working with the councillors and with the staff, essentially, we had a number of COVID Zoom chats, such as the time that we, back in January, February, getting together just wasn't a possibility. So we had a lot of Zoom chats and a lot of Zoom calls, taking a look at, what do we think of where we've been, where we are today, and where do we see ourselves going in the future. And then when, luckily, some of the borders and the restrictions lifted and we were able to come together for a couple of days, that's staff as well as our councillors. We were all able to gather in the Town of Mahone Bay and really kind of, hash out and to further discuss what it is we are looking to do and what our strategic plan should look like going forward, and really, throwing out different types of ideas and plans of what we want to do. So, part of the first thing that we look at in the creation of any strategic plan is talking about mission, vision, and our core values. So our mission that was selected by staff and councillors. So whenever you see information here, it's staff and councillors that have provided input. So where we landed was our mission is to provide high quality services to our community through efficient, responsible, and accessible municipal government. So that's our mission. That's what we do. Our vision, so we take a look at our vision and where we want to be over the next few years throughout the strategic plan. Our vision is an inclusive, thriving, and healthy community committed to fostering collaborative opportunities for sustainable growth. So that's, so taking a look at where we are today, and where we see ourselves 3, 4, 5 years down the road, this is our vision. We all know that when it comes to any type of organization, name it, a not-for-profit or a private sector business or a municipality, the way in which we work effectively is through our core values. So we created and we went through an exercise with everyone, taking a look at what are some of the key core values that are really going to dictate how we plan to execute upon our strategic plan. So the core values that were chosen was accessibility, accountability, equity, fairness, honesty, responsiveness, and stewardship. And those are all big words, and I understand that. But essentially, when we take a look at our strategies, our strategic drivers, which I often refer to as our strategic buckets, our areas of focus, all of those are to be executed with our core values in mind. So taking a look at where we want to go, where we want to be, our vision, taking into account how we do it through our mission, guided by our core values and our principles that are listed there. Is there any questions on this first part? All right. Hearing none, I will continue. So again, we also discussed, we're sitting here, if we're sitting here March or April or May of 2025, what are some of the key measurable results that we want to be able to say that, yes, we did that, we accomplished that. And it's the whole idea of setting goals and key measurable goals, so that our plans and our objectives and the things that we do really support us to help us achieve these goals. So for the key measurable goals, oops, sorry, I've scrolled too far. For the key measurable goals, we selected 4 goals that we would like to achieve. Goal number 1, we want to see a 10% population increase with diversity in age, ethnicity, and income. The second key measurable that we're looking at is to have increased supply of affordable housing. So that is listed as costing less than 30% of Mahone Bay's median household income to 25% of total housing units. So increasing the supply of affordable housing to 25% of total housing units. Number 3, the third key measurable result we want to achieve by 2025 is 50% replacement of the town's core water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure on Main Street. And last, but definitely not least, by 2025, we want 80% of the power for the town's electric utility that will come from renewable sources. So those are the 4 key measurable results that this plan and the direction that's listed out in the initiatives listed out in this strategic plan. These are the goals to which we are striving to achieve. Anybody have any questions with those key measurable results we are looking to get to?
I have one.
Yes, Robert. I think Robert.
It's Bill.
Unmute. Sorry, I had to unmute myself there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
A couple of, well, information, I suppose. What is the median household income of Mahone Bay now? Did you hear me?
Yep.
Oh,
Jamie,
Just
maybe you were
I'm looking
to
to one of the counselors or a staff member to provide that information. I don't have that information at hand.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Robert. It's 2016 census information is the most recent one that we have, so that's what we'd be going by. And off the top of my head, I'm afraid I can't remember, but I can certainly double check on that for you right now.
yeah, I'm just wondering what that actually translates to, that number 2. If you want to increase the supply of affordable housing, and then you've got a definition of what that means. Well, as a layperson, not really, new to Mahone Bay, I don't know how you go forward unless you know that information.
We do have people that know that information off the top of their head, but those people are not Dylan or myself, unfortunately.
Well, and I guess
Okay.
the kicker in terms of being able to make progress is knowing where the community is in terms of the supply right now. And I think again we're a few years behind because there actually have been a number of developments that have brought some more affordable housing units on stream. There also have been more housing units in Mahone Bay since 2016, so the relative number is harder to track. But I think we were looking at about 20% or just under 20% in 2016 of the households of affordable housing units in Mahone Bay. But yeah, we'll have in order to show
Okay.
progress on these, we'll be able to produce a report card that shows where we are and where we want to get to.
Okay, on the first measurable results, 10% population increase. The population right now is about 1,000 people, 800 people, something like that.
1,036, I think, technically.
Okay, so you're looking at an increase in the next 4 years, 5 years of 100 people.
Mhm.
I mean, that's all very, very good. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think other people can certainly speak, but in Mahone Bay's case, in the period between 2012 and 2016, the town also gained about 10% of its population, so a similar number of new residents, and it's a
Okay.
combination of new multi-unit development and additional units being added to existing older housing stock, so secondary suites or subdivisions, and some new, single-family home development as well.
But you'd really just leave that to the market to bring that about. Would you actually undertake any active sort of, I don't know, lobbying or advertising or something for Mahone Bay? Maybe I'm way ahead of you here.
I think you're jumping ahead in terms of the
asking.
rest of Jamie's presentation on these goals. And Jamie, you can certainly speak to this. These key measurable results represent across the various actions that council has laid out in the rest of the document what some of the results would be hoped to be. So there are a number of actions that would contribute to these measurable results that are throughout the rest of this document.
Okay. By the way, I like number 4 very much.
Great.
I'm not only here to make waves, I'm here to, say nice things too.
Well, thank you, Robert. Did Phil, did you have your hand up to say something as well?
I did, but I think Dylan answered the question.
Oh, he did. Okay.
It was
Great.
about the 25% of total housing units. And I think he sort of answered that question.
Right. And,
I wanted to know where we are now. And I think he explained that.
Okay. And one of the key things to remember too is that the new census is going to be coming out this month, right? So a lot more information is going to be provided, because the benchmarks that we do have are definitely older benchmarks. So we'll look forward to getting that census information and rating ourselves in terms of our key measurable results.
But you won't get that census information for 2 or 3 years.
Right. No. Yeah. But it doesn't, it's the idea, and we're going to look at it is, really kind of focusing on areas in which we can be more diverse in terms of, for the lots and for placements and for buildings, really putting a focus on the affordable housing component of it within the town.
Okay, thank you.
It's applying that lens. So those are the 4 key measurable results that we want to achieve, and those strategic priorities are really broken into, as I mentioned earlier, what I call buckets. And we have a number of buckets that I would like to go through. There's a couple of screens here that show all the activities from staff, and I'm not going to spend any time on those. But what I want to do is go very high level in terms of what we are proposing for the strategic plan for the upcoming period. So number 1, we are the sustainable municipal services. So to deliver efficient, progressive, and affordable services to our community ensuring our prosperity for the years to come. So to do that, so number one, focus, improve performance on town-owned utilities. So reduce water loss, increase flow capacity, reduce service disruptions, and increase demand. And you can see here some of the things that we have listed as our strategic actions that we are looking to employ to help us achieve this strategic driver. So undertaking strategic water, wastewater, and electrical rate studies and adjust rates as appropriate, implement initiatives to increase demand, complete water and wastewater system diagnostics, strategically replace and upgrade utility infrastructure. And of course, constraints include, overall taxpayers' ability to pay, borrowing capacity, and external funding opportunities for these ideas around improving performance of town-owned utilities. The second thing, as it relates to the sustainable municipal services, is to implement asset management planning. And by that, we mean establish and maintain service standards with public input on town services and rates. So how are we going to do this? First thing we're going to do is we're going to develop a 10-year asset management plans for each asset class, and the asset classes are listed below. We're also looking to integrate asset management plans into a 10-year capital budget. So those are the two key things that we are looking to do around the asset management planning. So again, under the heading, I'll bring it back up here, of sustainable municipal services, the third thing that we are looking to do is improve accessibility of public infrastructure. So we're looking to establish new and replacement infrastructure to current accessibility standards, increase usage of town facilities, public spaces, and improve ongoing public engagement. To do that, we are looking to develop and implement accessibility operational plan. We're looking to strategically improve transportation infrastructure to support healthy living. So when we look at that core strategic driver around sustainable municipal services, the three areas of focus is, again, to improve performance of our town-owned utilities, to implement asset management planning, and lastly, to improve accessibility of public infrastructure. So before I go on to the second strategic driver within this plan, are there any questions?
Seems very
Sorry,
good.
I'm not sure if we're, I don't, you're not, am I visible? I keep raising my
Gordon,
hand, but I'm not.
I can see
Okay.
your face and your top of your head and your hand.
I wanted to ask a question earlier, but my hand was ignored. I wanted to ask if the goals that you had set now in this strategy are superseding other goals that were already established by the municipality, or are they brand new goals?
So there are, so taking a look at the past strategic plan, what we often say, these are not carved in stone. So a lot of times, strategic priorities may shift. And when we take a look at the old strategic plan, any of those initiatives, activities that staff and counselors are working on, they too get moved forward in terms of setting up those priorities and different actions that we are going to be taking. But in terms of the overall core strategic initiatives, these are the new ones. Any other questions? So around sustainable municipal services. And Jordan, maybe just to help answer your question a little bit, and as I said before, I'm not going to get too caught up in all of this, but we do have tables in terms of what different projects are going on. And this lays out, the existing plan in terms of timelines, but a lot of these things have started in the previous plan. And, if you were to look at the notes from the last councillor meeting, you will see a lot of different business plans and projects that have already commenced, that are ongoing. Okay.
And
Jordan, does
Jamie, I
that-
just wanted to note if Jordan or anybody else was interested, there's a link in the chat there to the strategic plan 2018 to 21. So that's on the website if anybody wants to check that out.
Okay, great. So yeah, so the very first area of focus for us for this plan is really focusing on the sustainable municipal services. The second area that we are looking at is equitable and inclusive growth. And we define that as create and support an enabling environment for equitable and inclusive growth in the community, including investment in core infrastructure and for services. So the very first area of focus for us, number one, is support housing supply to meet the needs of growing community. So support population growth with an increased number of dwelling units by implementing a town housing strategy that fosters housing affordability, reduces the number of households in core housing need, and preserves our built heritage. So Robert, I think that speaks to your question that you had earlier in regards to, well, what are we going to be doing around affordable housing? So what we plan on doing is completing the Complete Plan Mahone Bay MPS and land use bylaw review update process and align results with the strategic plan and develop and implement housing strategy with affordability at its focus. So those are the core strategic actions that we are looking to do around supporting the housing supply in the plan. The second thing that we are looking is to provide equitable services to support growth. So dedicate ourselves to the continued improvement of services and our responsiveness. So some of the things that we are looking to do over the next 4 years within this plan is to review service levels and align with residents' ability to pay, explore shared services and partnerships for efficient service delivery while connecting with communities' passion and interest. Next, we want to establish inclusive strategies for provision of municipal services. And lastly, within this one, strategically expand existing infrastructure to support planned growth and development. So that's the second piece. And the third piece that we look at is governance to meet expectations of our growing community. So engaging the community and govern consistently with council's values. So to do that, the actions we are outlining is to align staff capacity, capital, and operating plans with strategic plans. So Jordan, that answers a bit of your question too from the last plan. Update policies and bylaws to support effective governance and strategic plan implementation. Prioritize public engagement processes, supporting strategic plan implementation. And lastly, regularly review progress and continually improve strategic plan for effective implementation. And I know that that last one for sure is something that is kept up on a regular basis and spoken to and addressed at each of the council's meetings. So anything that's on the strategic plan. So that's the third one. And again, it gets into a table of the different activities for the next 4 years. So again, around our second strategic pillar of equitable and inclusive growth, we are looking to support housing supply to meet the needs of our growing community. We're looking to provide equitable services to support our growth. And lastly, we're looking at governance to meet expectations of our growing community. So within that strategic pillar of equitable and inclusive growth, is there any questions or comments?
It's Lisa here joining you, and I just encourage participants to raise their hand in the participant tab or reactions, or where your tab at the bottom of the page, because when you are on screen share, you don't have a gallery view.
Okay.
So easier to, yeah, that's why Jordan, you may have been missed there. Easier to raise your hand, and I saw that you did so earlier. Any questions? Please raise your hand. Or if you're struggling to find that tab, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, we're a smaller group, so please feel free to unmute and ask away. Otherwise, under the participant tab, you can click raise hand.
I,
William, would you like to ask a question?
sure, I was just looking for the hand raise thing. I couldn't find it, but I
Oh.
guess I just wanted to ask about the housing supply part of this. And I guess it's largely that I'm trusting that the town housing strategy will be broad enough. I know it wants to focus on affordability, but I'm concerned that focusing on affordability, you might miss other opportunities in innovative housing choice. Sometimes when you look at just affordability, there may be some other solutions that can be affordable as well, but maybe not part of that stream. And I just wonder if the strategy will be open enough to those possibilities. I'm trusting it will. I know this is a broad brush document, but I just wanted to raise that question.
Great question. Would anyone like to respond from staff?
Yeah, I can certainly comment, Bill. I think you're picking up on the fact that it is a broad document, and really the way that it's phrased there, gives the opportunity to use that housing strategy to pick up, and the development of that, which will certainly have a public component, to pick up opportunities that might be there. And as I think it was commented earlier on this meeting, a very substantial goal for, even though we did do it in the last census period, a 10% increase in population. So that has to be a driving motivation in a housing strategy, and then with affordability of said housing as a focus. So I think it's a broad attempt to pick up any opportunities like you're talking about. And certainly I'll be fascinated to hear thoughts and opportunities like you're referencing.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just scroll down if people want to read the others. Is there any other questions or comments around this second strategic driver?
Currently, there are no hands raised. Again, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
No questions around governance? Everyone loves governance, don't they? That was just me trying to be funny. Sorry. All right. So, okay, good. Well, your pictures are in Zoom. They're all so tiny over to the side, and I can only see 6 of you, and I'm one of them. So it's very, very small. All right. So that's the second strategic driver. And just like with the first one, we have a table that is outlining the process by which we look to complete the strategic initiatives. And that is all there as well. So the third strategic driver that we are looking at is environmental leadership. So ensuring responsible and balanced growth management by incorporating progressive standards and a commitment to preserve our environment. So we look to accomplish this in a few ways. Number one, reduce community greenhouse gas emissions. So we're going to focus on renewable energy supply with a reduction in emissions by sector, guided by ongoing public and customer feedback. So again, this ties back nicely to one of the 4 strategic goals that we set out at the beginning of this document. So how are we going to do this? Number one, we're going to implement community greenhouse reduction action plan, known as the GHG, expand the home heating program, expand the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We're going to invest in renewable energy regeneration, such as the community solar garden. And we're going to look to support regional initiatives that contribute to reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. So again, under environmental leadership, the first thing we're going to do is reduce community greenhouse gas emissions. That's one of the key focuses. The second area is adapting community infrastructure to climate change. So protecting our shorelines against sea level rise and addressing flooding. To do that, we're going to develop and implement policies and bylaws supporting adaptation measures on private property. And secondly, invest in strategic infrastructure, so shoreline and stormwater management. So that's the second thing that we are going to be focusing on. And the third area within environmental leadership is to practice stewardship of our natural environment. So improve harbor water quality and urban forest health. So to do that, we're going to develop and implement an urban forest management plan, which includes our parks. We're going to invest in strategic infrastructure improvements. So elimination of straight pipes is something that was discussed at length, and land acquisition, so watershed. And lastly, encourage recognition of the value of natural assets in the town. So again, when we talk about environmental leadership as being our third pillar, third key area of focus, we want to reduce community greenhouse gas emissions, number one. Number two, adapt community infrastructure to climate change. And number three, we want to practice stewardship of our natural environment. Do we have any questions or comments about this third strategic action?
I see Jordan has raised his hand. Go ahead, Jordan.
Thank you, Lisa. I was curious if if the municipality will rely on provincial or maybe federal data to gauge whether the greenhouse gases, the GHG emissions have indeed been reduced.
Well, I think I'm probably the one to speak to that too. So you can find, again, I'll post in our chat in a sec, but we have a draft, well, it's now an adopted, but I'm not sure if the website's updated on it being adopted, greenhouse gas emissions plan. The plan really details how we've come to the estimates that we currently have of the community's footprint. It was an effort over the past 18 months with staff and some support through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Clean Foundation here in Nova Scotia. We worked with a company called Sustainable Solutions Group. But ultimately, the town has created our own data set now that's quite robust. So hopefully we're able to actually collect and track our own data, supplemented by some things that will come out of that next census as well, you know. But with the census being as periodical as it is, we're really trying to keep track on our own, and there will be a lot of data collection going on in town over the next number of years people will get used to.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. That's really good news. I have a second question. I really like the use of the word stewardship, and I was really pleased to see or to hear that the town of Mahone Bay had created a land acknowledgement in partnership with a local Indigenous community. I was curious if the stewardship pillar of this plan or any other part of the plan includes partnership with Indigenous communities.
I might be the best person to speak to that one. We were very fortunate when we reached out to the Gold River First Nation. I was personally blown away at how willing they were to work with us, and we found some fantastic champions within that community. I certainly hope, and I believe that everyone does, that we can continue to build that relationship, but it's brand new. So I'm really not in a position to, I don't think any of us are in a position to speak for another community, but yeah, it's a brand new relationship and we are incredibly lucky with the reception that we've received. So fingers crossed.
So I'll scroll back up here quickly again. Any questions around our third and final strategic pillar called environmental leadership?
I see a raised hand. Marianne, go ahead.
Hi there. Yeah, just a quick question about the strategic actions under 3.1 to reduce community greenhouse gas emissions. The last time I saw it was then the draft greenhouse gas reduction action plan. I didn't realize it had been adopted. The draft GHG reduction action plan had as one of the strategic actions the maintenance of net zero urban forest loss. And I just wonder why that net zero loss of urban forest doesn't appear as a strategic action and doesn't appear to be referenced down when you get to 3.3. Has that gone missing, or have we stopped picking low-hanging fruit?
Well, Varian, I'm probably the one to comment about that. I think it, it is referenced here in as much as it says implement the greenhouse gas reduction plan, and that plan is approved and it is referenced there, but also here under 3.3 with regards to the development of the urban forest management plan. I would expect that goal to come back up as a central part of that plan development process.
Okay, well, I'm relieved to hear that, Dylan. I'm glad it hasn't been lost. Just a comment on the draft of the GHG plan. I don't know whether this has changed. The net zero maintenance of the urban forest was problematic because it didn't have a date attached to it. So if there's no net loss of the urban forest, as of when? And, as a goal, as a strategic action, I was just a little bit squishy. I think it's important to establish a date.
Oh, I certainly think that's good feedback to have, because that plan mostly is talking about 2050, and you wouldn't want to say, well, we can lose all of our urban forest and get it back by 2050, and I don't think that's the intention.
Okay, it's just we've lost a lot of urban forest recently. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions pertaining to this final strategic pillar around environmental leadership? Just gonna pop in the
No
chat.
hands raised at this point. Again, if you're still unable to find your raise hand feature, please unmute and ask your question. Go ahead.
So, so overall, so the intent, so over the past few months, again, from what I said at the beginning of this conversation, I was taking a look at a lot of the data that had been gathered over the last 3 to 5 years through different surveys and different methods of collecting the data to help inform and, create this vision and purpose in terms of what our strategic goals are for the upcoming future. And that future in this plan being from 2021 to 2025. And so, a lot of people, when they look at strategic plans, they start thinking, well, what about, this initiative that we were talking about or that? Again, this is a very high level plan. From it, just as is listed here, in the different tables. Underneath each of those, like 3.1.1 community greenhouse gas reduction action plan, there are a lot of actions underneath each of them. So again, this is a very high level plan. And the intent really of today's session here with everyone is to provide you with this draft copy of what the core initiatives are for the next 4 years and what our focus is for the next 4 years. And really to get any feedback from you about any questions you may have about what's presented, any concerns that you may have or comments at this time.
And Jamie, if I could just follow on from that, because I certainly want to give people the final chance to comment, but I also just wanted to specify that this session is, as is our standard process, to provide public information. So both in Jamie's presentation and the questions that have been asked, and again, the recording will continue to be available for people who missed it. But ultimately, some of the questions and some of the suggestions and comments that have been raised tonight, people may go away from the session or maybe struck in watching this recording or otherwise reviewing the document with things that they feel the council really needs to consider in adopting this plan. And so as the standard secondary part of our process for adoption of a document like this, we do have a hearing coming up next week. So that is the second part. So if you go away from tonight and you're certain that something in here would benefit from some editing, there is still an opportunity to take that to the public hearing and provide that as input to council. I want to say as staff, really enjoy talking to people and getting everybody's feedback here tonight. But I wouldn't want anyone to think that this is their only opportunity to make their voice heard, especially as many of the members of council obviously aren't able to join us tonight. They will all be present for the hearing if anyone wants to come back. And I'm sure at the end here, we'll put out a little plug for exactly when that is and how people can join us.
Thanks, Dylan. I see, Jake, you have your hand up. Go ahead. Jake, if your hand is up and you have a question, go ahead. We can't hear you yet.
I'm trying.
Oh, we've got you. We hear you.
Oh, you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay, good, good, good. It's a great presentation in its draft form. I see that under the constraints under a lot of the headings, there's staff capacity. Is there a risk of basically not having the staff to carry out the and implement the actions, or will this turn into a maybe it just seems to be an awful lot of actions and plans for a 4-year period for a small town with a small staff. Are we are we in a risk to that if we don't kind of complete the actions, that we won't see any of it, if you know what I mean? Are we at risk of not seeing the tangible results by trying to take on too much, I guess is what I'm saying. It seems like a big thing, and it's going to take a lot of work and coordination. And well, I guess what I'm asking is, will there be a review to say, you know what, maybe we should pare this down because of the risks associated with the public buy-in, the ability to pay. I know it's early in the game, but I'm just wondering. For me, it seems like a huge thing, and I'm a project manager for that's what I do, and it seems like, wow, this is a small town with a lot to do. Or will you be looking out for volunteers or what have you? I know it's a big question and it's a broad question, but it seems like a big undertaking for a town of our size. I commend you, but I'm not trying to be negative, but it seems to be a lot to chew off in a small amount of time.
Dylan,
Just like you're,
Dylan,
I don't want to put you on the spot, Dylan, but it's great if this can come through and to fruition. But
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that it is an ambitious plan, and I think that speaks to the sort of attitude that the community does have, and that's embodied in the council. Mahone Bay is a community that has seen a lot of change and a lot of growth in recent times, and I think it's taken on a lot.
absolutely, yeah.
We've been able to achieve things like our current wind farm that a lot of communities haven't. And so, I do agree that this definitely is an ambitious plan. There is an intention for council to have an annual review process and to have some metrics to be tracking, to have a sense of whether we are making progress. And I think putting the actions out over the course of the 4 years using those tables that Jamie illustrated also helps to demonstrate that, not everything would happen all at once over the course of 4 years, and spreading these things out, trying to essentially take advantage of opportunities that arise over the course of that time. So certain things will, I'm sure, move forward, much more smoothly than others. A number of the constraints have to do with external funding. And unfortunately, as a small community, we're always going to be, looking for alignment with higher levels of government, and where the things the council wants to accomplish align with those levels of government, those actions will probably move forward a lot more rapidly. I did want to pick up on your point about, council needing to acknowledge the staff capacity. And I think that's going to be true every year, but it also is true with the budget that council is working on now, which does include some commitments in this regard, including continuing our climate and energy program manager position to implement that greenhouse gas reduction plan. So there have been some, understandable commitments council has made to boost staff capacity to carry these things out. And I think there probably will be more to come as we deal with, what is the housing strategy actually going to look like, and how are we going to implement that? And there may even be, as you say, a role for volunteers. And I think that's a great thing about Mahone Bay as well, that there have some of these projects likely will be carried forward by volunteers and private sector.
Okay, thanks for that. And would we expect to see, as citizens and taxpayers, would the taxpayers be expected to shoulder, would, as the plan proceeds, would we expect to see, well, there's another part of the plan, there's another tax hike, and here's another one, and here's another one. I know that, improvement comes as a cost, and being environmentally conscious comes at a cost. And I think for the most part, people, accept that for the greater good and all that. But, some of the things Main Street was tore up 25 years ago to do the infrastructure for the water. And I didn't realize actually that we still had straight pipes, town resident straight pipes, because maybe it was just Main Street that we had to hook into when they did the treatment plant 25, 30 years ago. But are there still places in Mahone Bay that have straight pipes into the harbor?
Well, that's a couple of questions. I'll answer the second one first.
And then I'll stop.
when they picked up all the outflows, they picked up the outflows from the town system. So there were actually some properties that were not connected to the town system at that time, that just geographically were outliers and had their own pipe. So we only picked up the town system, and now the discussion would be around extending that system to serve those properties that have traditionally been on the, kind of on the margins of the waterfront, outside of that core area that's served by the town's collection system. That's why the straight pipes issue. To your other comment about tax hikes, I have to, to put this in context, I think this council has benefited a lot from the last few years' efforts by council to create some sustainable funding streams for capital projects. So a lot of the big projects included in here, like a solar generation project, the town has made a considerable effort to create capital funding streams that are, some coming from the resident base. So there's like an infrastructure charge that all residents do pay, but there's also dividend that comes back from the wind farm operations every year that goes into capital reserve. The town reserves any deed transfer money. So whenever properties are exchanged, that money goes into reserve. And so there's been an effort over the last number of years to build up the reserves, but also the reserve funding streams that are recurring annually, and we're helped somewhat by that. Things like the gas tax has been doubled by the federal government this year, and that's certainly an appreciated stream. So a lot of the projects would be funded through those type of mechanisms. But always there are increasing costs. I think as we look at each year and we look at a general cost of living inflation, the cost of our inputs, energy, and external contracts to the RCMP, and subsidies for education and other things do go up every year. So well, this plan represents the council's actions, the drivers in increased costs, as much as anything, are going to come from other sources as they would from this. Yeah.
All right, Dylan, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I love the questions.
And Jordan, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. Excuse me. I was curious to hear from Uprise why Indigenous consultation or partnership was not included in the stewardship pillar.
Would you like to respond to that, Jamie?
Run the steward. I'm not sure if I'd be the best one to respond to that, actually.
Or Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think it's a great question. I don't think we have a ready answer to that question. And these came from a lot of prior documents and prior feedback that we'd received, and council and staff making an effort to kind of go through all of that and chart some of the key points that had come out. And I think it's an emerging area for sure in our awareness. As you know, we have adopted a new statement. And as the Deputy CAO pointed out, we're really enthused about being able to work with the local band on that and on other initiatives. And hopefully some of these things listed here under 3.3 will be those opportunities, such as the development of the urban forest management plan. But you're right, there could be a more explicit reference in here, and it's certainly a good piece of feedback.
I was just curious if Uprise considered the current partnership or the already existing relationship with the Indigenous community as a strength that the municipality can leverage. And I would just really like to hear Uprise's thoughts on this.
I could respond to that and by saying simply absolutely. Diverse collaborations can only lead to more successful outcomes. So it's a positive, and to Dylan's earlier comments, it's something that will be moved forward. Anything else to add or any other questions? I don't see any hands up.
Well,
Robert has a
I'm
physical
waving
hand.
at you
There
here.
you go, Robert.
All right.
Go ahead.
I wanted to commend you all for this plan and the work that goes into it. I have some appreciation of these kind of documents, and they're not easily come by, and it takes a lot of work. I'm new to the town, but I like this town very much, and I can see that this is a go forward plan, and anything that, you know, well, I suppose personally I can ever do to help it out, well, I would be more than willing. It is ambitious though, and I comment from Jamie previously was, I think it was Jamie, you know, in terms of can the staff handle all this? Will the tax rate rise? Where's the external funding going to come from? I mean, all of those are real questions, but that's why you guys get the big bucks. So good luck to you.
Thanks, Robert. I think that reference was for Jake, who asked those.
I'm sorry, Jake. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Anybody else interested in asking questions or a comment? I just have to say thanks to those who used your reaction tab, and we had a little applause and some positive feedback there. Anybody else, please unmute and ask away. I don't see any hands.
You want to just stop the screen sharing for a last, as on our way out, probably at this point, just to make sure that if there's any.
Yeah. So we have a fuller view, gallery view of folks. If you'd like to raise your hand, now's the opportunity to make it nice and simple with a visual cue of, hey, I have something to say.
Oh, it's nice to see everybody here. Thanks everybody for coming out virtually. Actually, thanks for taking your time to stay indoors on such a beautiful evening.
Mm-hmm. The black flies are out. I'm staying in.
So no hands up. No
Just
unmuted
thanks everybody. It's Jake. I really appreciate being able to take part in something like this, and especially in the draft form. It's a good opportunity to make comments and see the plan, you know, in its fluid way here, just moving along. I appreciate it. I'll take part in more of these for sure. So thank you everybody that made it possible.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jake.
for joining.
Well, that'd be a wonderful segue for me to advise everyone of the next step. As Dylan mentioned early on, and some people hadn't joined yet, we are going to be having a public hearing next Monday evening. The public hearing will be streamed live on our YouTube channel, just like our council meetings are. But if anyone has any comments they want to make to the hearing, we had made arrangements for someone to come and see us in person, but COVID is not helping with that. So what we'll do is if anybody has any comments they want to make, or if they have any more questions to know about how that process will work, we'll ask you to contact the town staff. The phone number is 624-8327, or you can email clerk, C-L-E-R-K, at townofmahombay.ca, and I will work with you and find a way that you can submit your comments. We will figure it out. We figured out a lot of stuff over the last year. We'll find a way to make that happen, and I'm happy to help. So that will be, again, it'll be next Monday evening. That's the 10th at 7 p.m. It will be live streamed on the town's YouTube channel. And if you want to participate, get in touch with me and we'll figure out how in the meantime.
Yes, Penny?
My question is for Dylan and or Maureen. And is it the plan to have a council meeting immediately following the public hearing, as commonly happens?
No, the matter will come before council at the regular council meeting the next evening on the 11th.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you very
So
much.
there will be a
Thank you.
report of the clerk that brings all that information forward.
Thank you.
I'll say goodbye.
Well, thanks, everybody. What great timing. We're right on 8 o'clock.
Right
Enjoy
on
the
eight.
rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.